computer. And then I'll also send you a copy of the recording in an email. Well, the link to it, because it'll be on my YouTube channel. I know that's so fun because I have lots of weird stuff on there. All right, like primary class stuff, because they all like to be on YouTube.
Oh, that's super fun.
So, all right, so I am going to share my screen, and we are going to share the Secession. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Ashley and Greg, is that your name?
Mark.
Mark, sorry. Mark, you picked
Catalonia.
How do you spell that?
Catalonia.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and I picked Wales. Okay. And they are the Welsh people, but okay. All right, so what scarce resources do they want control over? Did you find that out?
So what I was looking up is I found on this website here, Catalonia and its capital, Barcelona, is the driving force of large and is the driving force in economic, or is the economic force in the area.
Okay.
So says this place is Catalonia. They have a lot of shipping coming into that area. So that means a lot of trade that happens. And it is, it says the gateway to Southern Europe. And a bridge to Northern Africa as well. So I guess
that's what I found.
Yeah. I guess just like control of not necessarily I guess an economic resource would probably be the best.
So they want Barcelona. Bottom line is they want Barcelona so they can have.
Yeah, and so in Catalonia, it's also like in Spain's richest region, and I mean Catalonians, they have their own language and heritage, and so they also want to like have their own country for that reason. They want to be autonomous. I can't even say that word. But there's also like a lot of rising unemployment levels, and so with that economic stronghold, with all that shipping and everything, they'll be able to better their economic standing right now.
Okay, so do you think that they deserve their own country?
You know, I think they do. I think Spain I think they're well off on their own, and I think because of Catalonia being, what's the word? Sorry, I am not articulate today. I don't know why. But there's like rising unemployment, and their economy was pulling the region down. And so seeking that autonomy from Spain, they will be able to create their own jobs and better their economy. And I think it would be better for those people. And then they'll be able to, have their own traditions and maintain those, and that so the Spanish doesn't, kind of take over that. So I think there's a lot of reasons that they could and should become their own autonomous country.
Does that sound okay? Okay,
Yeah.
Mark.
I
Do you
think
they do or no?
no. I think that they should remain part of Spain.
Okay. Why?
Forming your own country is hard. They realize the. I don't think that they realize the hardship that that's going to cause. They're not going to have any income coming into that region, so they'll have to rely solely on imports, exports, and they won't have the overall help of the Spanish government to be able to help them out. And I think that they can still keep their culture, but also still be a part of Spain. Similar to what it's like here in America, where different ethnic groups, where we're all part of we're all Americans, but we all have different cultures and heritages that we come from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That definitely makes a lot more sense.
Okay. All right. So I should have picked Texas.
I know, I was just thinking that too. I was like, go Texas.
Right?
Go Texas. Okay. Well, somebody should have picked California. They want to secede from the Union as well. But Texas can legally do it because that was in their agreement when they joined the United States, because they always had the option to succeed. Okay, so if for Wales, I didn't see any scarce resources that they, when I briefly looked, I didn't see any scarce resources that they may have wanted. I think that their big thing is they wanted their scarce resource is their language. And their culture, because they have have any of you ever watched Hinterland? Have you ever seen? It's on Netflix.
I have not.
Okay.
No.
So anyway, so I have family from Wales, which is why I picked Wales. But so the people that film the show Hinterland are from Wales, and so they actually film every episode twice. Once in the Welsh language, and then once in English. So I thought it was kind of interesting because so they're bilingual, but they have their own unique. And I think the other thing that they want to they want control over is the money, because I don't know how they want to do it, but they want to have debt-free money. They want to have their own currency that's debt-free. So they would make their own pound that has no wouldn't have any debt attached to it. Like the money would all have like a gold behind it and no debt, so that it would be. So I have to I understand at both of your statements on why they should stay and why they shouldn't stay. Forming your own country is hard, because you have to think about, oh, they wanted to have their own bank. That's right. They wanted to create their own bank. So that coming up with a money system and have it backed by something, because, you know, when the United States started out, they had Fort Knox and they had gold, you know, to back up, and then they had like you had like dollars that were held against silver as well. So, and they actually have printed on them against silver. And anyway, so I can see, but there is a difficulty, but I think that the Welsh people, even though they're part of, you know, in the same little country that is England, you know, because you have Scotland on the top and you have Wales on the southwest, and then you have England. I could see how, I think that they could be their own country because they're already kind of like their own little country anyway. I mean, because they're Wales, they're not England, so they're part of the dynamic that makes up the United Kingdom, but they are their own country with their own language. So I believe that they could be their own autonomous country. Anybody have anything else to say?
It's interesting down in Peru. I mean, no one's trying to like become their. Actually, no. It's actually a lie. There's this. It's kind of like a little province, or like a state called Arequipa, and they've been like trying to become like their own country for a long time. And it's interesting because they really have no reason to, because they're so far south, and in that region there aren't a lot of like one of the most native languages to Peru is called Quechua, and not many people speak it anymore because Spain came and dominated, and so now basically all South America, you know, they speak Spanish. But it's just interesting to see how Arequipa, like, even though they want to become like their own country and they act as though they were their own country, they really don't have the resources to become one. And they don't really have a reason. They just kind of want to revolt and, you know, become, you know, just break off. And it's just so interesting because in Cusco, which is close to Arequipa, that's where a lot of the native speakers are. And those people are just peacemakers, you know. They just want to all remain one country so that way Peru, you know, stays stronger. And it's so interesting, like the different views on becoming, you know, like your own country and breaking off from something. And I don't know, it's just really interesting to me how it all like works out, and how Texas, you know, Texans want to become their own country or whatever the heck's going down there. It's just interesting to me.
Well, I think that, you know, at some point, you know, you have to say enough is enough. You know, I mean, I think I'm really old, so I've seen a lot of different changes in the country, and some of them aren't necessarily for the good. And so, I mean, I get a lot of things, but at some point, the states have to be able to stand up for their state rights, and sometimes that's, if you look in the past where just recently, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes or be disrespectful, but so when the states came out and said that, you know, there are a lot of states that came out and said that marriage is between a man and a woman, and then the Supreme Court came back and said, no, that's not how it's going to be. states can't rule on that. I mean, so that was, each state was supposed to be able to be have their own little government to, but, and be able to make their own laws. And if the citizens of that state voted it in, then they should be allowed to have that. And then to have the Supreme Court come back and go, nah, just kidding. States can't do that.
I think that's good and bad, though, because, that was one of the reasons that Smith and the early Mormons were persecuted, is because the states' rights trumped federal rights. And the federal government couldn't do anything about them, being killed. So, I think there's good and bad to that. Because, I think with some of the states, if we gave them autonomy over themselves, I think it would be way out of control. In some cases.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, if you're and I can see the point where, so like if you talk about Missouri or Illinois, where they kick the Mormons out. But now the federal government is too big, if that makes sense. At some point, it shifted, and I don't think it shifted for the good. It shifted for the bad, if that makes sense. Anyway, all right. So number 2, China is another country with multiple ethnic groups that are attempting to secede from the majority Han culture. One group that is currently the most active is it Uyghurs? Did you guys read that article?
Uyghurs? I read what I could. I don't know that it gave me the whole article, because it said like halfway through, like, this is all you can read or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I read most of it.
Okay. So from my understanding, so we have, and so they're not mentioning the Tibetans as well, right? But you have these two groups that they look different, and they're not given their own, they don't get any good jobs. They're kind of like the low men on the totem pole. So is that what you got from the article?
Yeah, and how there's like that cycle of like the Tibetans and the Uyghurs, like they're not educated, they don't have a job, people discriminate against them, and I don't know, it's just like a whole cycle of that. And where it talks about ethnic stratification on that first asterisk, like there's probably going to be like a more dominant ethnicity, and I don't know, it's just, I think it does play not like a huge, it's not, I don't think it's like the main role, but it does play like a good part. Because like, for example, the Tibetans and I'm just going to say Uyghurs because I don't know either, but they couldn't get a job, and their economy was not very good, and it just created this whole cycle. And by them kind of becoming their own country, kind of breaking off from, was it China? Yeah. I feel like they'd be able to get a better education in a way, like they could create, actually I don't even know how to explain this. I talked to my dad about it, and he made so much more sense than what I could really say. But basically, they would have more control over who gets jobs in that area, and so they could, kind of help, and it would just better that economy and better where they're at, because they'll have control over who has this job, and maybe it might help people go to school and get a better education. I don't know, but
okay. So yes, they would have more control over jobs, schools.
Yeah. Jobs, schools, and their overall, economy, their overall government and all that.
Okay, okay, I guess let's go back up and answer this other question. What role do you think ethnic stratification plays in secessionist movements?
I think that I think it just boils down to they're trying to preserve their culture. They see, maybe certain parts of their culture being not necessarily taken away, but maybe forgotten, and they want to preserve that.
Okay, Ashley, do you have anything to say about ethnic stratification?
I do agree with them trying to preserve their cultures and I do agree with that. Let's see. I'm trying to gather my thoughts together, so if you want to go, you totally go.
Okay, no, go ahead. So I think that okay, whoops. I think that ethnic plays a big part in because human nature, at least what I've observed. Let's see. So so ethnic stratification is if you have somebody that's really low in your ethnic, in a group. Human nature is you can only keep good men down so long before they will rise up. So at some point, look back at, you had all these great men that came over, from England, and they were being oppressed by the king. And they're a long ways away from the king, and they felt like they were being oppressed, and so they eventually rose up, and so they had to, and granted, they weren't like, but they felt like they were being oppressed, and I feel like that's how like certain ethnic groups feel. Back when the white people were, taking advantage of the Indians, and the Indians, their only recourse was to fight back. And now they almost, became annihilated because they wanted to save their autonomy. They wanted to be, and they wanted to save their culture and their way of life. And I can see that. And I think that you can only suppress somebody so long before they're eventually going to rise up and fight back. So, okay, with that in mind, okay, Mark, what do you think about?
I was actually sorry.
Yeah. No, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I don't want to. But something I was just thinking about is, do you think there's also like an ethnic bias as well? Because like giving jobs to someone, like I'm sure that there is a little bit of bias there. And so maybe they don't want to give jobs to the Tibetans but I think that, or to the Uyghurs, but I think it is important that ethnic stratification is like definitely thought into like very well, because if you think about it, like here in the US, like the US is like this giant melting pot, it's very, very diverse. But I feel like in other countries it's not exactly like that, like China, it's a very strict policy place, and I feel like there definitely is some sort of bias there. And so it's hard to give jobs to other places when your country needs it too.
You're right.
And so it's hard, like when people are just coming into America and taking jobs, and now people who have been born and raised here are suddenly jobless, and I'm sure that other countries don't want that. And so with that whole stratification process, I'm sure that China's placing the Chinese people above the Tibetans and the Uyghurs, and then that causes the other groups to not have jobs. And so that's why I think it's important that they are also autonomous, so that way they have jobs within their country. They are able to work and, better their economy and just
Right.
help themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Mark, what do you think about the Uyghurs? What's your feelings about them from what you read?
I mean, first and foremost, China's never going to let them go like that. Never,
You're right.
ever
Yeah,
happen.
Can I just say one thing about this? So they're talking about millions of people, not just like 100 little like puny amount, but millions of people that are these, illiterate, in poverty people, and I just can't even imagine. Eventually, don't you? Are they just keeping them in poverty and illiterate so they don't rise up?
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And what would it take for them to rise up? They're in a position of power over them, so it's really
Right.
to even overcome that. I mean, they would have to have a lot of education to even begin to think about seceding from China.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that happening. I don't think they would have success at all. They might be successful within themselves, but like on a global scale.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so as much as I'm rooting for the Uyghurs to become independent, I think it will take a lot of time and education before they can do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, so we're down to the United States. Okay, so the United States is home to a wide variety of ethnic groups, including Italians, Irish, Japanese, Mexicans, Native Hawaiians, Navajo, African Americans, and many more. Which ethnic group would be most likely to become a secessionist minority and why? So, all right, Mark.
Well, I mean, you can't. I don't know. It's kind of hard to group the Native Americans in there because they kind of already are that, being on their own reservations. So
Right.
I wouldn't really group them into this category. I mean, I live in Arizona, so for me, it would probably have to be Mexicans because of the proximity that most of the U.S. is to Mexico. And just with, the whole illegal immigrant movement that's going on right now.
Huh. Sorry, I'm gonna have. All right, so I have to say that I agree that I could see the Mexicans rising up because, they feel like we took some of the country away from them. I really don't see the Italians, the Irish, or the Japanese. I'm sorry. So I have to agree with Mark on the Mexicans. The white Anglo-Saxon Protestants fought and took away some of Mexico to form states, and I see them want it back. Okay. And they're overrunning. I feel like because I live in Texas, so I feel like, a lot of illegal immigrants. And I have to say that I feel bad for a lot of illegal immigrants that come over, because they are trying to make a better life. But then you have some that come over and, are criminals. And, I feel bad that, that they ruin it for those that it'd be better if you could just apply and come in. And anyway. All right, yeah. Ashley, we've given you some minutes to think about it.
Thanks. Well, see, I live in Idaho, and I mean, there are some Mexicans like out where I live, over towards Boise.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Boise's like very urban, but out where I live, it's very country, very like heavy farm areas.
Yeah, you don't have migrant workers?
They do. And so like out there are quite a few, but they are uneducated and they're just here to work. Like they put their kids in school, but their kids don't even finish school because they have to go out and work and make money for their families.
Right.
And so, I mean, obviously I don't get to see a lot of like Latin or like Mexican culture.
Right.
Because, you know, it's dominantly white here. But so I personally, because I'm not, you know, up close, I don't see it up close. I don't really see Mexicans.
Okay.
So, but I do definitely understand your point. It's just I don't have like that experience with them. But I feel like I honestly feel like Hawaii could just become its own country.
Okay.
Because they have a resort, so they definitely have lots of income.
Oh yeah.
They have lots of it. And so, and they have their amazing culture that people love to, you know, indulge in and experience. And so I really think that economically, Hawaiians have kind of the upper hand in this because they already have their islands, you know?
Yeah.
They're kind of just called, you know, they're just part of the U.S., but they're kind of off on their own. So I think economically they could totally do it and become their own country. And
okay. All right. So, which ethnic group would be least likely to become a secessionist? I am going to say although, you know, I could have said Italians because, you know, they have the mafia thing going. Oh, but is that like, am I profiling them? So let's see. I am going to say, I would think that, you know, Irish. I'm going to say Irish. And the reason I think that they would be least likely become a secessionist is because they have already been assimilated into the United States. So for the most part, any Irish people that have come in, they've already been assimilated into the United States culture. They have, I feel like they have lost their, I mean, you may still relate to being Irish, but they, I don't think they don't necessarily identify themselves as solely Irish, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm just going to put that. Okay. All right. Ashley.
honestly, I honestly think Mexicans, you know?
Okay.
I don't think, I mean, there are good universities down in Mexico, but if they were able to go to school down there, then they wouldn't need to like be crossing the border and coming to the U.S. to work. And I think they rely a lot on, you know, coming to the U.S. and trying to get a job that I don't think that they could really risk that. I think they would think of it. I definitely think that they would try to, but I don't think they would succeed, in my opinion. I just think
I do have
The
to
U.S.
tell you,
is.
yeah, the U.S. is there.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
no, I have some friends who have degrees in Mexico, but
Yeah.
they get paid more here, like working in the dish room where I work, than they did in their profession. Like one of them's an engineer, and one of them was maybe an architect or something. But I mean, so they had like these huge degrees, but they're worthless up here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of those degrees, like in Latin America, they're pretty generic. Like they may say that they're an engineer, but I think they really just know the basics. They don't really go into like as much depth as they do here in the U.S., you know?
Right, but which is why it's worthless. It's probably great down there, but they don't get paid very much. So they could come up here and, let's say you
There's
make,
not a high demand for it either down there.
yeah.
People just build their own things. They don't need it. They just build whatever house they can, you know? There's not a huge demand for it. And so I think I just think Mexicans are the least likely to succeed based on education standings and everything.
Okay. All right, Mark.
I think the Native Americans, because they're already they already have their own reservations. So what need would they need to? They already are.
So, and I have to say, so they already have their own reservations, and the U.S. government already gives them a stipend.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they already get government money just for being an Indian.
Yeah.
And living on, but you have to live on the reservation. So, so there's some stipulations, but you do, and then any casino that opens up on a reservation, all the money that's made from that gets divided equally between all the people that live on the reservation, all the Indians that live on the reservation. So they don't need, you're right, they don't need to separate from us because they already have a great, I mean, they're getting paid.
Yeah.
They get paid not to separate from us.
Yeah.
So why would you want to separate from us?
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay, you guys, I'm going to save this. I am going to send it to you. I believe this time we answered every single question. So.
I would hope so.
Well, I'm just, last time we, it was funny. It just said that we didn't share the right stuff apparently. So.
Well, you live and you learn.
Yeah, well, I mean, we still got full credit as far as what I could see. Okay. All right, there we go. So we still got full credit. So we just didn't answer all the questions correctly. So I believe we've answered every question this time. Do you guys have anything else? Mark, you gonna visit with us again next week?
Yeah. I'm in your group from now on.
Oh, yay! Okay. So Mark, I just went ahead and I don't know if you saw, but I just picked 7 times to do it. If you want to ever you can run the show, but I just picked 7 times because I was like, well, I'll just start it so that at least it always pops up on me. Okay, so next week, I'm going to be on vacation. So I will really try to be on time. But I'm going to be at Disneyland. So
Nice.
I know. It's
jealous.
It's fall break.
Already?
Well, it's fall break. I work at a university, so it's fall break for the university. And so, because we started they started school in August, like 2 weeks before Labor Day.
Mm,
And so
okay.
it's their fall break. So
Lucky.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be over there in 2.5 weeks. We're going to Knott's Berry Farm.
oh, fun. So I don't know everything we're doing because we're going with some of our kids. So but we do have passes to go to Disneyland. So anyway.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be fun.
So
I'll be here in Rexburg freezing.
okay, you'll be in Rexburg freezing, and I'll be jealous because I'm still like sweating and.
I'll switch you places. You can come
Okay,
take
well,
my place.
the air conditioner was on yesterday. No, on Monday in my office. It was great, and I was freezing because I dress up, like it's gonna be hot because I haven't had air conditioning for weeks. And so yesterday I wore, a long sleeve shirt because it was cold in my office. Yeah, the air conditioner was broken again. So, all right.
That's always how it is.
It always is. So, Mark, thanks for coming. Ashley, thank you. So I'll go ahead. It takes me about 15 minutes for it to download onto my computer and then for me to upload into YouTube. But then I'll go ahead and send an email to you guys with the link and the paper that we filled out. Okay?
No worries. And did you get my Gmail address?
I did, and I did send. Will you check and make sure that you got something in your Gmail? Can you do that really quick before we turn off?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll stop recording, but